I say that an addiction is nothing more than an external manifestation of internal pain. And I believe that the addiction solves a problem for the person, whatever that addiction is. And to me, addiction makes no difference whether it's weed, like you mentioned, heroin, whether it's cocaine, whether it's sex, whether it's porn, money, gambling, you name it, right? They're all meeting that person's needs. So in a sense, the addiction is a solution because nothing else has worked for that person.
Hello and welcome to Bipolar Talk, the space to discuss all things bipolarity. I'm Clément Bessard, founder of Upstage and Bipolar Type 2. Our mission is to transform our bipolarity into an opportunity, and we're lucky to welcome Nick Marcon. I hope I pronounced your name right. Basically, we're going to talk about trauma, addiction, and how family can support young people in distress. And I'll let you present yourself, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you, Clement. So as you've heard, my name is Nick. I have been a psychologist for over 20 years. I was born and brought up in Switzerland and moved to Australia when I was 16. That's now nearly 40 years ago. I'm getting old. And I started a company called Emotional Balance. That's my business. And we've been running Emotional Balance now for 18 years. So through my career as a psychologist and as a support worker, as a counselor, I have worked in a number of areas. So I worked in a prison. I was a coordinator for the drug and alcohol unit. I always loved working with people with addiction, and I have some experiences that I can probably share a little bit of. In prison, but I also worked with one of the only youth offender units in Queensland at the time, in a adult prison. So we had 17-year-olds who had some very serious, obviously, offences, and they were housed in a adult prison. So I kind of looked after them as well, with the team together. So I then started Emotional Balance after I left the prison. I started Emotional Balance, but I was also working in a drug rehab. To go back, I worked in a drug rehab called Logan House, which is here in the southeast, in near Brisbane, in Logan City, and I was there for 2 years. And then I started Emotional Balance. So that was 18 years ago. So I have worked mainly in the drug and alcohol youth. And I guess my passion, due to drug and alcohol, I ended up working in what we now call complex PTSD. So once upon a time, it was just called PTSD, but now we have noticed and we know that people who have ongoing traumas, it eventually turns into complex PTSD. So my, I guess, bread and butter, if you can call it that, was working with people that had what they used to call multiple personality disorder, who now we call it dissociative identity disorder. So I've had nearly 20 years experience working with very, very complex cases across the spectrum, from young people all the way to older adults. I have worked with families. I have worked with Vietnam vets and people from the army. So I've been very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with some amazing, amazing people. And they are amazing people because they're survivors. They are fighters, you know? So, but that's enough about
Yeah.
me. Sorry.
Oh, but it's like, I agree with you. It's so interesting because I work with bipolar people myself.
Yeah.
And it's true that having this mentality of like coming back,
Mhm.
it's like it's always like, I don't know, I'm always amazed by what people can achieve.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit. We can talk about many things, but I feel like psychology has to be explained for someone, because as a patient, as bipolar, you're like, people tell you to see a psychologist. They don't know what to expect and to know if it's a right fit. Because I
Mhm.
feel a lot of people, they go see a psychologist, it doesn't work out, which is okay, it happens.
Yeah.
And then they don't want to do it with someone else.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
do we get over that?
Absolutely. As I was saying to you before, I have been a firm believer for over 20 years that the most important thing is the relationship. Um, the title that I have as psychologist, it just means pretty much that I am able, I guess, to work as a psychologist, but the title doesn't mean really that much to me. I mean, I'm very grateful that I'm a psychologist because I've always wanted to be a psychologist. However, I am a person that is helping somebody else go through their difficult times. And I think the biggest thing that I can say is that the most important thing is the relationship. So, and this is what I used to say to everybody that came to see me. If you get scared because I've got a bald head or I've got a beard or I've got whatever, my big nose, my Italian nose, I said, please just let me know, because the most important thing is that you feel okay here. This is a safe place. So for anybody that's listening, if you are seeing somebody, then please, 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 if your gut is telling you this isn't working, this isn't right for me, then it's not a bad thing to go, you know what, thank you, but no thank you. Do you know? Absolutely the most important thing. And I am an advocate to constantly say to people, getting help is something that we all need. We don't have the village that we used to have, where we had the elders around us, you know, that we used to go to and go, I've got a problem, I've got this, I've got that. We don't have that anymore. So unfortunately, now it's, psychologists and counselors and what you do, what I do. But ultimately, that relationship has to fit and it has to be right.
Yeah, I fully agree. And it's not easy to, because it's tough, to accept to go and see someone and accepting that it's like on average, maybe it's not going to work. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't try again, but it
Absolutely.
just mean that maybe it's not the right fit. And as you say, it's like just trust your gut. I fully agree with that. Sometimes it could be like the best psychologist in the field. It just
Hmm.
doesn't match.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you and I because I've worked in the complex trauma field for so long, and obviously I'm also in the NDIS, I've worked in disability as well. Sometimes the way I look, I'm just using myself as an example, can be a trigger for somebody from their past. And I can't help that. I look the way I look. Unfortunately, that's my mum and dad. But if that's a trigger, then obviously that's going to come out with gut instincts going, something doesn't fit. And therefore, you should give yourself the opportunity to go and find somebody else. It's not bad to say, no, thank you. Thank you for your opportunity, but I need to keep looking. Because once you find the right person and you feel comfortable, everything will, but if you are willing to work at it, you know?
Yeah, I fully agree. I like to go back to the basic because when I was diagnosed a few years ago, I knew I had to go and see a psychiatrist, but it wasn't clear for me I needed to see a psychologist and a psychiatrist and a peer helper. And I
Yeah.
discovered that they work together. And
Yes.
can you explain me like what a psychologist's job is?
Yeah.
How do you become a psychologist? And I feel it's important. And the
Yeah.
different type of psychologist also.
Absolutely, because that's what yeah. So you will, for people that are looking, there are different types of psychologists. So I focused primarily on being a counseling psychologist. So you've got a clinical psychologist that very has had extra training, that they do supervision. They don't do extra university generally, but they do extra supervision. And I could have been a clinical psychologist if I had chosen to go down that route, but I was too busy working and supporting people to go and do extra, supervision. I was already getting enough supervision, and therefore I never became a clinical psychologist, even though I was told by people, you should be. So, but there is really, the difference is that if you want somebody to talk to that is that you want to get counseling from, then you should always focus on finding somebody that has the experience in the counseling. Now, most psychologists will do counseling. So, because unless you're in a hospital or in a, sort of in that crisis intervention space, where you don't get 6 to 12 or 20 sessions, you will generally have, most psychologists will be counselors as well. Now, the difference between a counselor and a psychologist is pretty much where the focus lies. The psychologist has been trained in doing assessments as well. So, whereas a counselor is primarily trained in just counseling. So, they do a lot more counseling subjects than a psychologist will do, because a psychologist will spend time learning how to use different assessments. So, the IQ test, or, checking somebody's memory capacity, personality disorders, or anything like that. There are tests, and the psychologist is primarily trained in all of those, and they can deliver and score and interpret those scores. And the psychiatrist basically is a medical doctor that has done mental health training, who then prescribes medication. So a psychologist does not prescribe medication. I'm just saying it. I know, Clement, you probably already know this, but just for those that are listening to us. So I hope that
Yeah.
has cleared it up a little bit.
I think it's really important to go back to that, because when you're bipolar like me, you're overwhelmed with a lot of information of people telling you you should do this, you should do that. But it's not about the raw information. It's about, at least for me, and it's about accepting those information, accepting that we are different and that we need help. And it takes time to go from, for us, we call it the stage of hope. So like, okay, I need to take my treatment. I need to go and see a psychologist. How do I find a good psychologist? And it's building, and it takes time. And
Absolutely.
you build your team, you build your plan, and then it works out.
Yeah, absolutely. Clement, can I just say something? Because I think that for people that may end up listening to this, I'm going to say to you that every single human being that's ever lived and ever will live and is living right now will have mental health concerns in their lifetime. We all experience anxiety, depression, all of the ups and downs in life. And what I really struggle with is, as a psychologist, we have diagnosed people, right? And I understand the diagnosis. I understand that it helps people. But I also struggle with it because it's not a disease as a disease. It's something that every human being struggles. And I've been working so hard to demystify and what's the right word I'm kind of looking for, to make people actually understand. Sorry?
Stigmatization.
Normalize. Yes, destigmatize that, everybody suffers with mental health. It's just that most people aren't willing to say, especially in men, right? Got to be tough, right? Got to just keep going. But that's not the truth. The truth is we all suffer from something mental health related at some point in our life, and it's okay to get help. Absolutely. Do you know?
Yeah, totally. And that's one of the big things about accepting that you need help, and to go forward and to
Mm,
do it. I'm going back a little bit to, I think, which is probably the most important subject for me, is because you work with a lot of people who have addiction while young.
hmm
And addiction for us as bipolar is probably one of the most difficult things, because so on average, I look up the data, we are 4 to 5 times more addicted to
hmm
substance than other people.
Yeah.
If, like me, and I talk about it now, I was addicted to weed when I was like 20 years old, and I didn't know I was bipolar at the time.
Yeah.
But actually, that's one of the reasons I maybe become bipolar, and also it was it was something that I couldn't do normally, and my friend could smoke and stop, and for me was too much. And so you work a lot of people with addiction, and how does it work? What is the different step?
Yeah. So I have always said, and I know that there is now in the recent probably year or two, I've noticed that there is a lot of social media coming out that really starts to explain what addiction actually is. But I've been saying for 20 years, and this is why I ended up working in complex PTSD in with very complex cases, because I believe it's trauma that causes most things in our lives. So I say that an addiction is nothing more than an external manifestation of internal pain. And I believe that the addiction solves a problem for the person, whatever that addiction is, and to me, addiction makes no difference whether it's weed, like you mentioned, heroin, whether it's cocaine, whether it's sex, whether it's porn, money, gambling, you name it, right? They're all meeting that person's needs. So in a sense, the addiction is a solution because nothing else has worked for that person, which is why it's so hard to give it up, because it's a solution. That person, when you were experiencing all of this pain and you just, you know, and this is another thing. I believe every human being has an addiction to something. You know, some people will become more addicted to exercise. That's not me. I've never had an addiction to substances, but I had an addiction to succeeding and to work and to, try and earn money and make a difference in people's lives. And that was my addiction. I moved it to, well, if I can stay healthy mentally and physically. So we don't give up an addiction. We substitute it for something else that is more beneficial, I believe. So when, we've been going about this wrong, I have never, and so many of people like me who have worked in this field for 20 years are saying this war against drugs is just ludicrous. You know, let's help people, not stigmatize them, not making them feel bad. There is a video out there, and I wish I could remember the name of the person that originally came up with it, but they've been talking about the rats that were given water, and I think it was speed. They put water, like speed, in the water, and the rat would always go for the speed water, but the rat was not in a normal environment. So this psychologist or psychiatrist or doctor created a rat park with all the different foods, different things for the rats to do. And guess what? None of the rats went for that speed water. They all went for normal water. So it's saying a lot, right? They didn't need it because they had the interaction in the environment. They had opportunities. They had friends. You know what I mean? So I hope I'm making sense. But yeah,
Yeah, no, but I'm. It's like a subject that I think people talk a lot about, which is like the way most governments see drugs, and the way it's a lot about stigma. And I saw also some data about kind of the same subject in Portugal, where heroin and consumption was illegal, and it was a big problem. And it just decided that if you're consuming drug, you're not a criminal anymore. And it was totally okay to talk about it and go see your doctor and be like, okay, I'm addicted. And even if you take substance, you won't be seen as a criminal, but just as someone who is addicted. And by doing that, I think I forgot the exact number, but in a few years, consumption of heroin went down by about 50%.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
they didn't do anything else.
No, no. Look at the Swedish, all the northern countries in Europe, they are doing it right. They have decriminalized drugs. They have made it a normal part of, people Some people will use drugs for different reasons, but if you destigmatize it and you don't make it a criminal offense, people are more likely to get help, because sooner every person I have ever worked with will have said to themselves at one point or another, I need to stop. This is not helping me. But they tried, they would go cold turkey. How many times have you tried to give up in the past? How many times have I tried to give up? I make a joke. I do have another addiction, and it's carbs. I am so addicted to it's the most powerful drug for me. I have to completely stay away from it now. I'm an Italian who doesn't eat pasta nor pizza. And I know I make a joke about it, but that's what I'm trying to say, is that we all struggle with things, do you know? And if we just normalized it and didn't see this as a criminal and a bad thing, do you know? Like, if you look at, out of all the drugs, do you know what's the most damaging drugs in the world? The
I'll go
legal
for
one:
sugar.
alcohol and tobacco.
Okay. I would have go for sugar.
Oh, yes, sugar is a huge one. Yes, we've got a major problem with that too. I like how you brought that up, because I didn't think about that. So, yeah. But when you look at, the medical model, when you look at presentations to hospitals, 80%, I can't remember the exact figures, but I do remember they used to be around 80% were tobacco and alcohol related.
Yeah. And so I okay, as bipolar, we have a probability to be addicted. And if you were like me, and or if you are like I was, what do you do? Like, how can you find your way? Because talking about it is a huge thing,
Hmm.
and knowing that talking about it with a psychologist. But I think I really believe into having different people to do different things. You have
Mm,
your doctor who can take care of the treatment, which is really useful. You have
absolutely.
your psychologist who can help you with psychotherapy. And in the case of bipolarity, I like also the peer helper, because he have been through what you have been doing, and it's also a different mindset. But
Hmm.
like, what what do you usually what would you say to someone who's like thinking about stopping?
Yeah.
What would you advise him to do?
Quick break. Can you let us a review on Apple Podcasts or the platform of your choice? It really helps us break the stigma around bipolarity. Let's get back to the episode.
So the first thing that I always say to them is, I don't want you to just focus on stopping the addiction, whatever it is. Because if you don't replace it with something else, it is very unlikely that you will succeed. And I'm not saying that because I don't believe people can't give something up, and people will say to me, look, I gave up, I don't know, heroin, you know, and I did a cold turkey. But if you start to really look at, for somebody that successfully stopped their drug of choice, whatever that is, you will find that they replaced it with something else. Now, if you don't find something that you can replace it with, then you don't have anything to go to when it gets difficult. But I always go a step further back. Why did somebody start using drugs in the first place, whatever that substance is? And that's why I've always said that an addiction is nothing more than an external manifestation of internal pain. When you heal the internal pain, whatever that is, the need for that substance will reduce. I'll guarantee you that. But that's the most difficult part of the job, right? Is to how, people don't want to unpack the traumatic stuff in the past, you know. But I've always said that you don't have to talk about everything in detail to heal from it. There are so many different things that I would do to help somebody heal from their past, and I know this is going to sound a little bit weird, but I would always ask somebody that was trying to heal, and especially because we didn't want to talk about the trauma over and over and over, because you don't have to do that. I would say to them, you as the adult right now, if you could go back to that younger person that started being in pain, what would you want to say to them? What would you say? And it's about nurturing and helping that younger person heal from that. And we can do that ourselves. Realistically, ultimately, you heal yourself, right? No one else does it for you. I don't do it. I'm just there as facilitating it. You are there to facilitate.
Yeah, and that's your role, is to help the person do it, because it's tough to change. Yeah. And I think the same as you. It's like, how do you replace it with something that you love to do? And how do you find these things, and how do you build this routine to do it? And when it triggers, what do you replace it? And it's tough. The biggest thing is, at least from what I found, I'm curious to have your opinion, is like, we all have those those window of opportunities, and sometimes we are not there, and we don't want to, or we cannot. At least as bipolar, sometimes it's true we cannot, because of just a chemical thing. It's like we don't have dopamine. It's like you cannot do shit.
Yeah.
But when you have this window of opportunities, just try to seize it and do the thing. If you have to, how does it work? Because, okay, you try to find this thing you can replace it with, and how the person can guide you and help you, because it's always a team working with a psychologist trying to fix one of your problem. Of course, your psychologist has to be good, but if you're not sharing the right information, so what do you need from the patient for it to work?
I think the biggest thing is to be vulnerable enough to really explain how somebody feels. I think that if I was to go and see somebody, if I don't explain certain things in my life, they won't get a full picture. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. There will be things missing. And especially when you are talking about people who have severe trauma in their life, they've got addictions, because in most cases, as I said before, we all have some form of trauma in our life. We've got some mental health conditions that we all struggle with. But you will find that people that are, really, really in pain will generally always use some form of a substance of some kind to help ease that burden. So the most important thing is to be open enough to give that person you're talking with the honest truth. And that also means when they're not ready, because you're absolutely right. I'm not here to make somebody ready. I'm here to support that person through that journey. And it's okay not to be ready. They don't have to be ready on my schedule. They have to be ready on their schedule. And like you said, sometimes dopamine just won't be in the brain and you won't feel like doing anything. And you know what? And this is the thing, right? That's okay too. Because when you think about it, what happens? This cycle continues to go round and round circle, right? You go, all right, I need to change. I want to stop eating carbs. I don't know, sugar, weed, whatever. Right, I'm going to do it. What do most people do at that moment in time when they do have that energy? They go, I'm going to quit forever. How likely is that to happen? Not many people have ever quit on first time and stopped altogether, right? Normally it's this revolving, they go through their cravings, and then they have another smoke, they have another pasta, whatever, sugar, and then what happens is that they beat themselves up. You're useless, you're this, you're that, whatever. What's that going to make a person feel? Even worse. So then they're even less ready. So sometimes a lot of the times when I was working with people, is to get them ready. The first thing they need to stop doing is beating themselves up because they're not ready, or because they've tried before, because we all fail and learn from it. It's the failures that get us to be successful. Do you know what I mean? And I say this in business. I haven't learned what works in business by what I did right. I learned what works with the things that didn't go right. And it's the same for us as human beings.
Yeah, and I think You said, Nick, it's really about like, it's okay, like I feel you if you're in depression, like it's tough, but you will get this motivation at some point, is willing to do things. And for me, the toughest was I cannot do it on my own. It's too difficult. I need people
Absolutely.
to help me, and I need to open myself, and I need to ask for my friend, for my family, for my
Yeah.
psychologist, for my psychiatrist. And I know that because it's tough and it's difficult to replace it with something else, the fact that I have those people around me is going to be okay. And it's going to be difficult. I think it's
Yeah.
like, let's not lie, but you have hope and you can do it. And I, I, I put your link into the description. Like, if you want to try to do it with Nick, I think it could be a good option. But the most important is to really, like, as we say, just have the courage to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the you made a really important point that most of us, we are not an island. We cannot survive by ourselves. And we are a social animal, I say. We're a social being. And the thing that is so sad about, especially today with the social media, is look, there's some wonderful stuff that we've received out of social media, like the ability to learn anything we want to. It's all at our fingertips. When I went to university, for me to even find a research paper, I had to go to a physical university and go through the physical books and then copy each page. Now it's all in front of our fingertips, but what it's made us more alone than we have ever felt. Because when you look at it, everybody lives their perfect life on social media. So for those of us who don't have a perfect life, for those of us who feel down, we feel like we're failures, we feel whatever it is, every time we open those social media things, what is it saying? Oh, well, look at them. They've got it together. You don't. But that's not the truth. The truth is we all struggle with life. And if everybody was just being honest about their struggles, everybody will go, oh, so everybody's struggling with the same thing at some point or another in their life. And that's what I was saying about the village. I've done a lot of presentations over my life, and I'm doing a lot of training. I actually, just for your viewers, I personally don't do the counseling anymore because I've got so much work in training and all of the other things that I'm currently doing. I'm no longer doing the person one-to-one counseling other than EAP work. But it's the village that helps, and we don't have a village. And this is what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to create a bit of a village. You're trying to help people connect. Somebody understands me, you know? Like, who's this Nick guy? He's a psychologist. What would he know about bipolar? He's never experienced it. And to be perfectly honest, how would I understand if I haven't been through it? Now, I can tell you, I have suffered with anxiety all of my life. I have suffered with depression for most of my life. But if I don't have, the bipolar, then I really can't understand everything that you've been through. But I can still understand if I put myself in a position, and this is what I used to do all the time. What would it feel like for me if I was going through what that person's just told me? And that's where the village comes in. Because the elders of the village or the medicine man in the old days, or they would know when a person in their village was going through a tough time. They would see it. They would see them because they would be isolating. They would see it because they wouldn't be eating as much. They would see it. They weren't happy and dancing, and you know what I mean. So they didn't have a stigma around any of that. It was just, the elder would go up and go, "Hey, you okay? Where's that happened? Who does that today? Who goes to somebody and just goes, "Hey, are you okay?"
No,
What we say is, if you are struggling, then reach out to me. Who's going to reach out? No one.
no. And one of the things, like, as you say, we can bring anything to us. In the past, you wanted to eat, you needed to go outside.
Mhm.
Now you can just fill your fridge it's stupid, but
Yeah.
it's like for me and depression, the fridge is a problem because it means I can stay a few days
Yeah. Yeah.
without leaving my home.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't, maybe I wouldn't have those depression because I will have to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Vitamin D, sunlight is so important. I'm going to ask you a question. Hopefully let me know when we've run out of time. But I always used to ask everybody that I ever worked with one question. At some point, I would say to them, tell me, how do you eat an elephant? And they go, I'm not eating an elephant. I said, imagine you've got an imaginary elephant. How would you eat it?
How do I eat an elephant? I think I probably tried to open it with like, if I have a knife or something, I try to open the leg and just put it on fires or something.
Yeah. So you would eat it one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Right? We would never want to eat an elephant. Okay.
Of course, yeah.
I'm just saying I love animals. But it's that, the idea, I guess, is that you've got this huge mountain, How do you overcome that? Well, it is the one step at a time. And this is something that I see a lot in mental health, is that when somebody gets the energy to do something, they go all out. They go to the gym, for example, and spend 2 hours, and then they are sore for the next 2 weeks and can't do anything. So I used to say, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. So here's a little story. I had a gentleman who literally hadn't gone out of his house for over 2 years. And I used to talk to him over the phone. And do you know how I got him to start coming out, and eventually he came to my sessions in my room? I said to him, do you think you could open the door? And I would always make a big deal, right? I would go, I'm going to give you some homework now. Really, really important. It's going to be quite difficult for you to do. And you could see the worry on their faces, but I had a smile on my face. So they kind of go, what are you trying to do? So I would say, all right, so here it is. Okay, I'm ready. Can you open the door? And they kind of look at me and go, what the hell? What do you mean? Yes, of course I can open the door. Well, that's not a challenge. I don't want you to do anything else. I just want you to open the door every day, once a day. And then this gentleman also had the issue that his mailbox was overfull with bills. So I said, just do that. But I need to do this and this. No, just open the door. Do that for a week. When we talk again, let's see how you go. What generally would happen is that after a few days of just opening the door, they go, well, I'm just going to go for a quick step down the stairs and then go back. And so slowly but surely, your milestones are achievable, and that's what needs to happen as well. That's kind of how I would work with somebody. So
I have the same attitude, kind of. It's like a goal, and I usually try to even go down on the goal.
yeah,
It's okay if you just do that, and then because it's just making yourself doing those milestones.
absolutely.
I think with addiction it's really a lot about that. Those real little milestones. For me, it could have been at the beginning. It was like, oh, I didn't put that much weed. I put less.
Yeah,
Even if it is interesting. I think, as we say, it's really about like when you are feeling better and when you change your environment and you have something else coming into your life, then it's much easier. And for me, was like, I think I wasn't happy at the time. I was feeling alone. And when I didn't felt alone anymore, it was much easier. And it was
absolutely.
what got me out. So I have this final question, Nick.
Mhm.
If you had a magic wand, what would you
Yeah.
change in mental health?
What would I change in mental health? Change in people or in whatever? I know that we're working on this at the moment. We've been working on this for a long time, and that's to destigmatize mental health. If I had a magic wand, I would love for everybody that is alive today or is born right now to not have the stigma that's still associated with mental health. So that asking for help because you're down, you're anxious, you're whatever, is as easy as asking somebody to pass the salt. If I had a magic wand, that's what I would like to see. If you had asked me about drug and alcohol as well, I would say the same thing. Destigmatize, decriminalize it, and give people the help and the support that they so desperately need, and stop this war on drugs.
Thank you, Nick, for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I admire you for doing what you're doing too, because you are also opening yourself up too. Do you know?
To learn more about bipolarity, go to our website, upstage.com, HOPESTAGE.com. See you soon.